Welcome back to another episode of Get Fit with Des and Tam. Today, we're gonna give you the biggest bang for your buck exercises. Nowadays, when you're scrolling the internet on your phone, there is a lot of stuff out there when it comes to health and fitness. And unfortunately, a lot of it is complete garbage. Or just useless stuff that you kind of are actually just wasting your time with. So we want to give you five or six of our top exercises that if you have nothing, if you have minimal equipment, or even if you're just really short on time and only have about 30 minutes to get a workout in, these exercises are what you can and should be doing if you want to get the most out of your workout. So, number one on the list is squats. Now, this is one that I get a lot of kickback on from new clients, maybe who haven't worked out in a while, or maybe they had an injury, or maybe they just never stepped foot in the gym. Oh, I can't squat. Everybody can squat, and we're gonna show you how, because there is 1,000 different variations you can do. You just gotta find the right one for you. So, step one, or exercise one, is just a body weight squat. Is just find your right positioning. This might take a little while to find your stance. You might want to go a little bit wider. Women, we tend to be a little bit wider because we got wider hips. Men, you might be a little bit narrower. Same thing, women, because we're meant to bear children. Sometimes our hips, we're gonna be pointing our toes out a little bit, versus men, you might be a little bit more straight on. So once you find that position, all you're gonna do is come down, drop that butt down low to the ground, keep those knees right over top of your toes. So a bodyweight squat is probably the easiest. You can also do what's called a sit to stand. So if you have a chair, a couch, a bench, anything, all you do is like you're sitting in a chair and standing up. You sit back onto that bench, that couch, and stand up. Simple, easy. So, getting a little bit more difficult would be adding weight. I would say the next progression would be to just hold a pair of dumbbells at your sides. So now we're adding a little bit of load to it, making it a little bit more difficult. So we're just, same thing, squatting down. We want to make sure that we keep that chest up so we don't fall too far forward. Keep that core tight. Now, if you want to change the orientation of the weight, you can make it front loaded. What this will do is focus on your quads a little bit more. So when you put that weight in front of you here, it's going to be more quad dominant, versus if we put it on our back and we had maybe a barbell. If we were in a gym using a squat rack, we could have a barbell across our back. That would be a little bit more glutes, hamstring, but also quads as well. So obviously a barbell back squat, if you have access to it, is gonna be kind of the hardest of all the exercises in the squat family. And then one last one I want to show you. So if you have a lot of issues with squats, like if you feel like when you do it, maybe your heels pop up, or like knees cave in, or maybe just back issues, like having a bar on your back is very uncomfortable, we can do what's called a goblet squat. So we're gonna take one of those weights, hold it right in between your hands here, kind of right at chest height, and then come squat down. So same thing, you wanna keep that chest up. So you don't wanna let that weight drag you forward where you kick your butt out. You wanna sit straight down and keep that back and spine as neutral as you can. And you just hold that weight right up at your chest. And this one is really gonna force you to work your core as well, because you gotta have a tight core or you're gonna topple forward. So, squats. That is one that you want to add to every workout. Next one is what's known as a deadlift. So there's 1,000 variations of a deadlift, but what I would say is start with the easiest, and that's going to be, you can have a band, you can have weights, whatever works for you. Even just practicing this movement before you add load is a good place to start. So if you think about touching your toes, usually you'll just go like this. That's not what we want to do. We actually want to drive our hips backwards. So think about sticking your butt out. So hopefully no one's behind you when you do this, but you want to really push those hips back. Almost think about driving your weight kind of over your heels. So we don't just want to hinge forward. We want to push those hips back and keep that full foot on the floor. So typically what I see people do is they'll shift that weight to their heels, but then let their toes flip up. That's not what we want to do either. You want to think almost like you're pulling through the floor with your toes as you shift that weight back. So step one, more of a straight-legged deadlift. So if we add a little bit of load to that, we're simply just focusing on driving those hips back, keeping those legs straight, so not letting the knee bend, and really just feeling that pull right through the back of your leg and hamstrings. And then keeping that full foot in contact with the floor. Now, we can switch to a variation that's called a Romanian deadlift. And this is where we're gonna let our knees bend naturally as we do that hinge. So as we kick those hips back, now the knees are gonna bend. So instead of keeping them locked straight, we are allowing those knees to bend, getting a little bit more glute action, lots of hamstring action here, and pulling up. The other thing you want to make sure when you do this movement is you're not rounding your back. So you want to keep your back really nice and straight. Keep that chin tucked to your chest. And try not to let those shoulders round. Keep that chest high, shoulders pulled back. Now, another good place to start with this one, if you're having a little bit of trouble with that, is to do what's called a B stance deadlift. So what that is you're gonna kick one leg behind you. It's also called a kickstand. You might see it on the internet. And then you just want to kind of come up on your toe on that back foot. And we're just simply going to do that same motion where we're hinging forward, kicking those hips back. And again, you can grab a weight, hold it opposite your supporting foot. So whatever foot is kicked back, that's where you're going to hold that weight. And just letting that knee of that back leg bend naturally. So front leg, you're keeping straight. Back leg, a little bit of a bend. And this one we want to make sure too that our hip is not higher on one side. So you want to keep those hips flat. That's why you want to let that back leg bend just a little bit. Perfect. Now, if you really want to challenge yourself and make it a little bit more difficult, we can do what's called a single leg deadlift. Now, I would not suggest doing these unless you have those first basic ones locked down, because this is a very challenging exercise. And I do tell most people, if you want to try this one, have something supporting you. So, say you have a railing or something at home, or even in the gym, another piece of equipment. Tam can support herself on that other piece of equipment to make it a little bit easier for her to focus on this movement. Because what can happen with this airplane movement is your hips start to kind of shift open, you twist, and you're kind of just all over the place, and then it takes away the effectiveness of the exercise in itself. So you really really just want to be slow and controlled. You don't have to move through this. You can even just do this one without weight. That is a good place to start. And you just really want to sink in to that supporting leg. And another misconception with this one is everybody thinks they need to kick their leg as high as possible. You might not have that flexibility. Your flexibility maybe might be here. So only go as far as it feels comfortable and as far as you don't feel like your hips opening. Perfect. And the last one that we're gonna do is a pressing variation. So there's two ways you can do this. You can either do a standing overhead press, so just standing in a hip width or feet split stance. You're gonna press up overhead, or we can do what's called a chest press. So laying down on the ground, you're just taking those weights down to the side, press them up over top of your chest. You can use the ground as a bit of a guide. And one last option as well is just to do from a seated position, sitting as tall as you can, pressing those weights up overhead. Elbows pointed slightly forward, full extension up. So those are 3 big compound movements that you can do. And once we come back after the break, we'll go over 3 more.
Welcome back. Before the break, we went over 3 big exercises that you can do, 3 powerhouse exercises. I'm going to go over 3 more with you. My favorite exercise is a push-up. I find you can get like a really good pump. It's good for your chest, your back, your abs, even into the legs. So what we're going to do is we're going to give a few different options. A push-up can be a very challenging exercise if you don't have a lot of upper body or core strength. So we will start from the knees. If the knees is a little bit too much for you, you can also do these push-ups against the wall. So against the wall, we'll skip that one today. We're going to go right from the knees. So we'll take our knees hip distance apart, abs tight, hands shoulder width apart. We're going to drop our chest all the way down to the floor. Exhale as you lift, bringing that right back up to your starting position. So take it down, exhale as you lift. When I do push-ups, I try not to count. I just go until I can't do any more. And then if you did want to make this a little bit harder, you can drop the toes down to the floor, pop yourself up off of your knees. Make sure your shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles are in alignment. Drop the chest down to the floor, exhale as you lift, and play around with the tempo. You might start off a little bit quicker, slow it down as you get halfway through, and as you start to hit fatigue, you might get a little bit shaky, might get stuck, and that's kind of where we want to be. We want to get to the point where we cannot physically do another push-up. We need to shake it out, take a little break, and hit it again when you're ready. So I like to do 2 to 3 sets of these, as many reps as possible from your knees or from your toes. We'll try that one more time, as many as you can. And these are a lot easier if you do them at the beginning of your workout versus the end. Keep going from the toes if you need to, until you can't do any more. Exhale as you lift. Big, powerful movement here. Nice job. I love it. All right, so that'll get your heart rate up. Nice and warm through the shoulders, through the chest. The next exercise we're going to do is going to be a row. So we'll grab our weights. You can go quite heavy on these. We have lighter weights here, but again, just playing around with tempo, play around with your mind-muscle connection. If you only have light weights available, just pretend that those are 100 pounds. So those 12 pounds are now 100 pounds in your mind. Abs tight, bending forward, hinging at the hips slightly. Bring your palms facing towards each other and then lift, bringing your elbows nice and close to your torso. Squeeze your shoulder blades at the top of that movement and bring that back down to your starting position. Exhale as you lift. And think about holding at the top of that movement for just half of a second and bring it back down. So when we do this, let's add a little bit of power. Pull. There you go. And pull. Pull and squeeze. 6 more. 6. 5. Looks good. You want to squeeze here. 2 more. And last 1. All right, looks good. So you were able to do the push-up, no problem. The rows looked really good. What we're going to do next is we're going to combine those 2 moves. We're going to take this into what's called a renegade row. So this is one of my favorites. You are going to need a dumbbell. Kettlebells work for this movement as well. So we're going to take the push-up position with our palms facing towards each other, holding on to the weights. You can go from either your knees or from your toes, whichever you're comfortable with. Drop down into a push-up, bring that back up to your starting position, and one arm at a time, row, other arm, row, back down into a push-up. Row, other side, row, back into that push-up. So you can go from your knees if you need to. This is quite challenging. A full body exercise. Other side, down to that push-up, back into the row. Do a couple more. Push-up, exhale as you lift. Bring that up, squeeze shoulder blades. Other side. 1 more. All the way down, push it up, row, last time, row, and last one. Shake it out. Good job. So I do like combining exercises like the push-up and then to the row, and then I'll throw it together. Just one last blast for those muscle groups. So you did excellent. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.